All right, today we are diving into a concept that honestly sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's quickly becoming a reality. We're talking about vibe coding. Yeah, it's a whole new frontier where you don't just write code, you kind of feel it. So let's just kick things off with a pretty huge question, right? Is this the end of coding as we know it? I know that sounds a little dramatic, but stick with me here. Because what we're about to see is that the very definition of what it means to code is going through this absolutely massive shift. So our first section here is all about going beyond syntax. And yeah, that means exactly what it sounds like. We're talking about leaving that rigid world of semicolons and curly braces, all that stuff we sweat over, and stepping into something way, way more intuitive. Okay, so what is vibe coding, really? Well, to put it simply, it's this whole new way of working where instead of writing code line by line, developers just talk to an AI. They use natural, everyday language to describe what they want. They focus on the feel, the goal, the vibe of it. And then the AI partner, it does the heavy lifting and actually generates the code. And this is where you can really see the massive difference. On one hand, you've got traditional coding. You know how it is. Super meticulous, syntax is everything. And let's be honest, the barrier to entry is pretty high. But then you have vibe coding, and it's all about your intent. It's conversational, and it's just so much more accessible. It's really a shift from being a mechanic to being an architect. You know, here's an analogy that I think just nails it. Traditional coding, that's like writing a musical score. Every single note has to be perfect. But vibe coding, that's like walking up to a jazz musician and just saying, hey, play something upbeat and hopeful. You're conveying an emotion, an intention, and you're trusting the expert, which here's the AI, to take that feeling and run with it. Okay, so that all sounds great in theory, right? But what does it actually look like in practice? Well, that brings us to our next section, coding and conversation. Seriously, just think about this for a second. What if you could build a whole app, a really nice one, just by describing it? Like the same way you'd tell a friend about a cool idea you had? The whole workflow turns into this really cool creative loop. It's simple, really. First, you just describe what you're trying to do, the AI takes that, and boom, generates version 1. Then you take a look, give some feedback in plain English, and the AI instantly makes changes. It's not about barking orders. It's much more like a creative partnership, a real back and forth. So here's a perfect example of what that first prompt might sound like. You'd say something like, okay, Claude, I need a simple portfolio website. Make it minimalist with a clean, modern vibe. Use a dark theme and a pop of electric blue for the accents. See that? The language isn't technical. It's all about aesthetics and feeling. Minimalist, clean, modern vibe. The developer is basically being the creative director right from the get-go. And then, bam, this is where the magic happens. An AI, like Claude in this example, takes that simple description and just translates it. It spits out the actual building blocks of the website, the HTML for the structure, CSS to make it look good, and JavaScript to make it interactive. But it doesn't stop there, right? The conversation keeps going. You might look at it and say, this is a great start. Can you make the project cards flip over on hover to show more details? And let's make the font a bit more futuristic. I mean, just think about that for a second. You're creating complex animations and changing styles without touching a single line of CSS yourself. All right, so we've seen the how of it, but what about the who? What does all of this actually mean for the role of a developer? That's a huge question. Well, the developer's role basically gets a major upgrade. Instead of getting stuck in the weeds, writing boilerplate code or spending hours hunting for a missing semicolon, your focus shifts way up. You start thinking about the big picture, designing solid architecture, solving creative problems, making the user experience perfect, and getting really good at directing your AI partner. It really comes down to this. You stop being just a writer of code and start becoming a director of creation. Your whole identity as a developer shifts. It's less about being a lone coder hunched over a keyboard and more about being a conductor, guiding this incredibly powerful AI orchestra to bring your vision to life. So what does this actually mean for your day-to-day? Well, just look at this. The amount of time you spend wrestling with syntax and debugging, it just plummets. And all that time and, frankly, all that mental energy is now freed up for the stuff that really moves the needle. High-level strategy, creative design, real innovation. Okay, let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture here. What does this intuitive future really mean for all of us? Let's just start with one number, 10x. I mean, that's the kind of massive productivity boost we could be talking about here. When you automate all the tedious stuff, vibe coding could totally supercharge the whole development process. Teams are going to be able to build, test, and ship things faster than we can even imagine right now. And this is so much bigger than just professional coders. By making it so much easier to get started, vibe coding basically empowers anyone with a good idea. Think about it. Product managers, designers, entrepreneurs, they can all start bringing their ideas to life, building prototypes without needing to be a coding expert. It's really the democratization of creation. So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. We're entering a world where you don't have to learn to speak the machine's language anymore. Instead, the machine is learning to understand yours. It's learning to understand your intent, your aesthetic, your feeling. And when that's the case, the only real limit is your imagination. So the question is, what new worlds are you going to build?